Welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly thrilled you're here today because we are looking at something completely fascinating, yet entirely hidden in plain sight. We're going to map out what I like to call the threat matrix. You see, when we talk about household pests, it's best to categorize these amazing yet highly destructive arthropods by what they actually view as a resource. So we're dividing them up into two distinct camps: pests that view our bodies as a resource and pests that view our homes as a resource. It's essentially a battle of biology versus architecture.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, unwanted blood-sucking roommates. Second, termites, the wood eaters. Third, ground versus wood termite ecosystems. And finally, beetles and carpenter ants.
Section 1. Unwanted blood-sucking roommates.
So we're starting with the pests that literally don't care about your house's framing or drywall at all. They care about you. The human body and our pets are their absolute primary resources for survival. First up, the infamous bedbug. What makes them such a formidable opponent is their creepy, stealthy biology. At just 3/16 of an inch long, which is roughly the size of an apple seed, they are perfectly designed to wedge into the tiniest cracks and crevices during the day. But here's the part that truly shows their extreme patience. A previously fed adult bedbug can typically survive anywhere from 2 to 12 months without a human host. Yep, up to a whole year. They are perfectly content to just sit there in the shadows, waiting for their next meal.
Moving from the bed over to our pets, let's examine the flea life cycle. This actually brilliantly illustrates why fleas are so insanely difficult to get rid of. The cycle goes from the egg falling off the host, to the larva, to the pupa, and finally to the adult. But the really surprising fact you've got to take away from this is that the adult stage is the absolutely only stage actually spent on the host mammal. The eggs just fall right off into your carpet, and the developing larvae survive down there by feeding on dried blood in the environment. Kinda gross, right?
And why does this matter? Well, we need to raise the stakes early on here because these wingless, laterally flattened little bugs are way more than just an itchy nuisance. Take a look at these serious pathologies. From flea allergy dermatitis caused by their saliva to severe anemia. They can even transmit tapeworms. Oh, and historically, the rat flea was the actual vector for the bubonic plague. No joke. They are miniature, highly mobile medical threats.
Section 2. Termites, the wood eaters.
All right, we are transitioning the narrative now from personal discomfort and biological threats to sheer structural danger. These are the insects that look at the wooden skeleton of your house and see an all-you-can-eat buffet. Now, what's really interesting here are the vital, practical differences between a flying ant and a termite. To the untrained eye, a swarm of either one can cause instant panic. But look closely. Termites belong to the order Isoptera, which translates to equal wings. You can clearly see a termite's wings are the exact same length, whereas an ant's front wings are much larger. Notice the body shape too. The ant has a pinched, skinny waist, while the termite has a broad, thick waist. Knowing this quick visual difference could literally save your house.
But how do they actually digest solid wood? Well, that brings us to some wonderfully weird science. Termites themselves can't easily break down cellulose. They absolutely need the aid of one-cell protozoans and bacteria living inside their gut. When new nymphs are born, they don't naturally have these vital microbes, so they obtain them from the older workers through a slightly gross but totally fascinating biological mechanic called trophallaxis, which is the direct mouth-to-mouth sharing of food and fluids. It's this hidden microscopic relay race keeping the entire colony alive.
Section 3. Termites, ground versus wood.
It's super important to understand that not all wood eaters operate in the exact same way. The ecosystem of a termite heavily dictates its behavior. I want you to let this number sink in for a moment. Over 1 million. That illustrates the massive, mind-boggling scale of a single Formosan subterranean termite colony. Originally introduced via recycled railroad timbers and now spread all throughout southern coastal communities, these subterranean architects build sprawling underground networks. These networks can funnel hundreds of thousands of hungry workers right up into human structures.
If you are ever trying to identify a Formosan subterranean termite, you want to focus on the teardrop shape of the soldier's head, especially when you compare it to a native rectangular-headed termite. That teardrop shape is an absolute dead giveaway. Another huge clue? Formosan colonies have an unusually high percentage of these soldiers, making up around 10% of their massive populations. In total contrast to that, drywood termites require absolutely no contact with the ground. They can survive in wood with less than 15% moisture. They lean completely into the whole hide-in-plain-sight motif. In fact, you often only identify them by what they leave behind. Take a look at these tiny fecal pellets next to a pen tip for scale. They are hard, dry, and uniquely have 6 concave sides. They don't change shape, size, or color over time. Honestly, finding these 6-sided pellets is like finding a fingerprint at a crime scene.
Section 4. Beetles and carpenter ants.
Termites definitely aren't the only ones destroying wood. We also have to watch out for other insects that excavate or bore into our homes. When it comes to boring insects, the type of mess they leave tells you exactly who you're dealing with. For instance, we have the true powder post beetle. It only attacks hardwoods and leaves behind exit holes packed with a really fine, silky frass, with no distinct pellets whatsoever. Compare that to the false powder post beetle, which attacks both soft and hardwoods, but the frass it leaves behind is coarse and tightly packed. Reading the texture of this leftover wood dust is exactly how pest professionals decode the threat.
So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding the difference in motivation between beetles and carpenter ants. Beetles and termites actually eat the wood, leaving behind digested frass or pellets. Carpenter ants? They do not eat the wood, not at all. They merely excavate it to create smooth, mud-free nesting galleries for their large, polymorphic colonies. Because they are just tossing the trash out of their nest, you can identify a carpenter ant infestation by looking in their debris piles for rejected pupal cases and dead insect fragments.
To wrap up today's explainer, let's do a quick callback to our weird science vocabulary from earlier. What do termites use to digest the cellulose found in wood? Is it A, bacteria, B, protozoa, C, enzymes, or D, all of the above? Well, if you remember our discussion on trophallaxis, you nailed it. The answer is D, all of the above. They rely on a wildly rich microscopic ecosystem in their guts to turn your house into their food. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If these tiny creatures rely on such complex hidden networks just to eat our homes, what other microscopic empires are currently thriving right under our noses?